The trading post on Veramask 7 was supposed to be neutral ground. Alira Ven had repeated that to herself a dozen times as she navigated the crowded marketplace, keeping one hand on the small, furred shoulder of the child beside her. Sarek's golden eyes darted nervously between the towering alien merchants, his six-fingered hand clutching the hem of her jacket. "Stay close," Alira murmured, though she knew the young Kashari understood little of human speech. His species communicated through subsonic frequencies and scent markers. But somehow, in the 3 months since she'd found him abandoned in a derelict station, they'd managed. The Kashari were a dying race. Their homeworld had been glassed by the Vralkoth Confederacy in a territorial dispute that the Galactic Council had deemed unfortunate but unavoidable. Sarek was one of maybe 100 survivors scattered across the outer rim. At 7 cycles old, he was still a cub, his crest feathers barely starting to shimmer with the iridescent colors that would mark his adulthood. If he lived that long, Alira felt the shift in the crowd before she saw the cause. A ripple of silence spreading through the market like ice across water. She turned, instinctively pulling Sarik behind her, and her heart sank. 3 Vralkoth warriors stood at the market's entrance, their chitinous armor gleaming black under the station's harsh lights. Each stood over 8 feet tall, their multiple limbs ending in serrated claws. The lead warrior's translator clicked to life, broadcasting in sterile galactic common. "Harboring a Kashari juvenile is a violation of Confederacy law. Surrender the cub." Around them, the market vendors melted away. Neutral ground meant nothing when the Vralkoth came calling. Their empire controlled half the known galaxy, and their concept of law was whatever suited their expansion. "He's under human protection," Alira said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Earth doesn't recognize your claim on Kashari survivors." The warrior's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Earth. The infant species that stumbled into the stars barely 2 centuries ago. "You have no authority here, human." Alira's hand moved to the plasma pistol at her hip, though she knew it was futile. 3 Vralkoth warriors against 1 human? The math was simple and brutal. But as she felt Sarek's small body trembling against her leg, she realized the math didn't matter. "Then I guess we have a problem," she said. What happened next occurred in fragments, each moment crystallized by the certainty of her choice. The first warrior lunged. Alira's pistol cleared its holster, the bolt catching it in the thorax joint. Not fatal, but enough to stagger it. The second warrior was faster, its claw raking across her shoulder, spinning her around. She felt ribs crack as the third one struck her side, but she'd bought seconds. Precious seconds. "Run, Sarek!" she screamed, shoving the cub toward a maintenance duct. She saw his golden eyes wide with fear, saw him hesitate, and then blessedly, saw him flee. The claws came again, and this time there was no dodging. Alira felt her spine sever, felt the cold spread through her limbs. As she fell, her last thought was relief. Sarek had escaped. That was enough. Death, Alira discovered, was not an ending. She woke in a place that wasn't a place, suspended in light that had texture and depth. Before her stood something that her mind refused to process properly. A being that existed in too many dimensions, its form shifting between interpretations. "Alira Ven," it said, and the words bypassed her ears entirely, resonating in her bones. "You have done something remarkable." "I'm dead," she stated. "You are between, a rare state. Rarer still is what you died for." The entity seemed to consider her. In this universe, power follows certain laws. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Faster than light travel requires dimensional folding. Consciousness ends with biological death. "But?" Alira asked. "Because there was clearly a but coming. But you are human, and humans have a peculiar quality. You break things simply by existing near them long enough. Physical laws, statistical probabilities, the very fabric of causality bends in strange ways around your species. Individually, the effect is negligible. But you, Alira Ven, in your moment of sacrifice, created a spike in probability that shouldn't exist. The entity gestured, and Alira saw herself dying again, saw Sarek fleeing. But this time, she saw something else. A ripple spreading from that moment, branching into futures that glowed with impossible potential. I offer you a choice. Accept death, and let your sacrifice stand as it is. Or return, bearing a gift that violates every law this universe holds sacred. You will become an anomaly, a glitch in reality itself. The power you will carry cannot be studied, cannot be replicated, cannot be understood by any science known to the galaxy. What kind of power? Alira asked. The kind that makes gods nervous, the entity replied. The kind that humans always seem to stumble into, despite all probability suggesting you should have destroyed yourselves millennia ago. You will be able to reshape matter with thought, fold space with will. Your body will reconstruct itself from injury as long as a single cell remains. You will not age. You will not tire. And you will be utterly, completely unique. Alira thought of Sarek, alone in the maintenance ducts. Thought of the 100 other Kashari survivors scattered and hunted. Thought of all the species ground under the Vralkoth's heel because the math said resistance was futile. I accept. Reality snapped back like a rubber band. Alira opened her eyes on the market floor, her body whole, her spine healed. The 3 Vralkoth warriors stared at her in shock as she stood. And for the first time in their long military careers, they felt something they'd never associated with humans before. Fear. Alira smiled, and space itself seemed to ripple around her fingers. Now, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the station's hull vibrate. Where were we? And the galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson. Humanity didn't play by the rules because humanity had never bothered to read them in the first place. And when a human decided to protect something, the universe itself would bend before they broke. Somewhere in the maintenance ducts, a small Keshari cub heard a sound that shouldn't exist. The sound of his protector calling his name. Alive when she should be dead. Powerful when she should be broken. Sarek turned back, his golden eyes bright with hope, and ran toward the impossible.